So, assuming that you don't live under a rock, I'm going to figure that you've heard something, or at least a little anything, about the explosion or controlled explosion that happened out in Palestine, Ohio.
You're looking at a toxic cocktail of harmful and potentially deadly chemicals purposely being burned off by authorities. But why? Let's rewind. This all started with a train derailment in East Palestine, Ohio, a town of nearly 5,000 people. 5 of the cars that derailed were carrying vinyl chloride, a dangerous chemical linked to multiple cancers. It's used to make a whole bunch of things, from car parts to PVC piping, but on its own, vinyl chloride can cause blisters, headaches, dizziness, and can be deadly if breathed in for too long. It's also unstable, and at least one of the train cars was at risk of exploding and sending deadly shrapnel flying as far as a mile. And while that massive explosion didn't end up happening, many are wondering if the way authorities are going about mitigating the incident is the best course of action. To avoid a catastrophic explosion, officials conducted a controlled release of vinyl chloride a few days after the derailment. They pierced the train cars so the vinyl chloride could drain into a trench and burn. It resulted in this. Authorities said that the controlled burn would release hydrogen chloride and phosgene into the air. Yes, as in World War I chemical weapon phosgene. So what does that mean for residents? Well, everyone living within at least a 2-mile radius of the derailment site was ordered to evacuate. Ahead of the controlled burn, authorities released an evacuation map and essentially said if you're in this area, leave or risk dying because of toxic fumes. Authorities have been monitoring the air and water quality since the controlled release started and said that none of the readings were concerning.
The big issue here is that there's scant media coverage. Number one, on the original derailment, which again, you can maybe find a couple of articles or you can find people waving it off, but they're not front page news. It's not given the magnitude that it deserves. But big issue here is that this has the potential to turn into a massive health crisis. Long story short, you had a tanker overturned. This tanker basically was brought to you by the Norfolk Southern Rail Company, and they basically had lay of the land to do their own investigations, handle everything, and the EPA finally stepped in, albeit a little bit too late. But their basic premise was that they were just going to burn this gas to create what was known as a controlled explosion and hope that most of it went inert. Well, only issue with that, this is vinyl chloride. So, vinyl chloride, that gas in and of itself is extremely carcinogenic. Expecting 100% efficiency in the conversion ratio, not realizing that, oh yeah, by burning it, you're also accelerating some particles of it, causing it to denature into hydrogen chloride, which, again, if you don't understand that, it basically makes hydrochloric acid, which adheres to water. It causes extremely toxic acid rain and so on and so forth. You drink it, it gets into the water supply. It's just really bad.
So the term butt plug was trending today on your favorite app. Yes, butt plug. Shame on you. Shame, 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 you awful conservatives for clowning Mayor Pete Buttigieg like that. That's insensitive. I do not support that. Insensitive jokes aside, Mayor Pete, people on the left, right, everywhere in between, anybody who doesn't bend the knee to you and your establishment cabal, they weren't happy with you because you didn't even mention at this presser here, this celebration of transportation, you didn't even mention the Ohio train derailment issue.
To work with your contractors, to work with your community colleges on building a workforce that reflects the community. We have heard way too many stories from generations past of infrastructure where you got a neighborhood, often a neighborhood of color, that finally sees the project come to them, but everyone in the hard hats on that project looking like, doing the good paying jobs, don't look like they came from anywhere near the neighborhood.
Right.
You can build community wealth that will help close wealth gaps in this country if we can tear down those barriers. But that happens at the delivery level.
You're the Secretary of Transportation. Any comments? Pete, I know people return to their homes and nobody unlived, which is great. But in this fiery situation, derailment that allegedly was a controlled explosion, we don't know what the long-lasting damage is going to be.
And even though North Lima is about 10 miles away from East Palestine, Amanda Brashear says when she went to let her dog out last night at about 10 o'clock, the smell made her eyes water. And she also believes it could be why her chickens are now dead.
So I walked up to the cage and this is what I found.
Amanda Brashears was going to feed her 5 hens and rooster this morning when she discovered them all lifeless, practically in the same position, with no signs of a predator entering their enclosure.
I'm beyond upset and quite panicked because they may be just chickens, but they're family.
Brashear says her chickens were alive and well yesterday. She believes the smell following the detonation of the train carrying chemicals that derailed in East Palestine is to blame for her birds' sudden death.
My video camera footage shows my chickens were perfectly fine before they started this burn. And as soon as they started the burn, my chickens slowed down and they died. If it can do this to chickens in one night, imagine what it's going to do to us in 20 years.
Officials have said that the smell wasn't toxic or dangerous, but
What's going on with the cleanup? What do you project as a solution to hopefully not let this happen again?
So this is what happens when you hire somebody not because they're qualified, but because they're gay. Has anyone else noticed that we've had a lot of problems in the transportation department since Pete Buttigieg took over? I mean, we've had airline cancellations, all national air travel suspended, and now we have toxic trains exploding. I mean, Pete, you suck at your job. Maybe you're just not qualified. Maybe we should stop hiring people to fill a diversity quota and start hiring people that are qualified for their job. I think that makes a lot more sense.
That's all. We just want to ask you some questions, Pete. But wait, there's more. In Inari, South Carolina, officials are responding to a train derailment there as well. A train has derailed also in the Houston area.
One person is dead after an 18-wheeler collided with a train in the Splendora area, causing that train to derail. This was the scene here about 35 minutes north of Houston.
The Ohio train explosion is right next to the Ohio River, which is the third largest river by discharge volume in the U.S., and it flows directly into the Mississippi River. Thousands of farms may be affected by this and thus harming the food supply. It looks like the trains are coming off the track for this Biden administration.
They call it speed dating. Only our victim had 15 days.
Well, you know what they say, Frank. Speed kills.
Mayor Pete is giving a crash course on how to fail the country. I'm sure Mayor Pete will get to the bottom of this no matter what it takes.
We gotta move quick. Tide is rising, and we have a sinking crime scene.
In this press conference, Mayor Pete was feeling a little derailed. Okay, I'm done. This is serious. This could affect the health of millions. From the sunflower country to Afghanistan to our border to bodily autonomy to transportation. When a certain process that happens every 4 years in our country is stolen, there are consequences.